sorry. We gave you the warning. If you didn't know, in the papers over the last week, a very dear friend of NERC and a longtime city engineer for Hammond passed away, Stan Dostotny. Stan was integral in regional decision making, and we know that municipal staff come and go quite a bit, but Stan was a bedrock of planning and of development in Hammond for 40 years. And with that said, I just ask for a brief moment of silence. Thank you.
Please be seated. And welcome. My name is George Topple. I'm acting chair for today. Kevin had a conflict with the Board of Commissioners in Porter County, so here I am. Happy Valentine's Day to everyone. And we can start by introducing I'm the Union Township trustee in Porter County. We start at Julie.
Susan Weber with the Federal Transit Administration. Kelly Winger, South Shoreline.
Bill Emerson, Lake County Surveyor.
David Wright, Gary Public Transportation, and pitchers and catchers report today. Awesome.
Tyler Kent, City of Valparaiso.
Margot Savano, South Lake County Community Service.
Thomas Lennon, City of Ford Transport.
Robin Barzoni, Tillman, Michigan City County.
Doran, Nurse staff.
Mitch Barlow, the NERC staff.
And we could start with
Amanda Rose, Nurse staff.
Andrew Steele, time. Greg Fuller, Charles Brasky, Nurse staff.
Dean Butler, Hammond City Engineer.
Jake Damara, Butler Fairman, and Cypress.
Jeff Hewitt, Sheriff.
Evan Luther, Nurse staff. Tori Cagle, South Brooklyn City. Claudia Taylor, Office of Administration.
James Winters, Nurse staff.
Gabrielle McManus, Nurse staff.
Scott Weber, NERC staff.
Gary Wadsworth, Nurse staff.
Chris Moore, News Engineer.
thank you. And will you please introduce yourself?
Terry Dixon, CMAT.
Thank you. And welcome everyone in the Technical Planning Committee. The meeting participation survey is out in the vestibule there, so if you could fill those out if you haven't done so, we appreciate it. Action on the minutes for January 9th. For the Technical Planning Committee, pages 1 and 2. Give you a moment to take a look at those. Does anyone have any comments or additions or corrections to the minutes? Okay, there being none, then we'll accept the minutes without objection. Moving on, public comment on agenda items. No one has signed up, to my knowledge. If there is anyone that would like to comment on the agenda items, do so now. Moving right along, presentation by Mitch Barlow, draft 2020 Greenways and Blueways Plan. Take it away, Mitch.
Thank you, George.
Showtime.
Thank you. Showtime. Yes, indeed. James, can you please hit that light over there? Not you, Chris. No, turn it off. Right there. You all can see me, right? Okay. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, very good. Thank you. And happy pre-Valentine's Day. For those who were at the Pet and Paddle meeting, you're going to get it all over again. So just a warning. For those who have not seen it, we are in the process of reviewing the update to the Greenways and Blueways plan. And we are within our 30-day comment period, and I am pleased to present to you the plan. And I'm going to be providing a very brief background because I've done that on a couple of occasions. We've been going through this planning process for the last couple of years, and we believe we got it right now after several comment periods. So let's move on. As you probably know, the Greenways and Blueways 2020 plan is a combination. We have had the Pet and Pedal plan on the books since 2005. We have done non-motorized transportation planning since the 1970s. And this was our last document, obviously due for an update. We also put out, in 2007 the Greenways and Blueways plan. This was the first comprehensive overview of conservation corridors in our region, as well as water trail opportunities. So that was due for an update as well. And as you probably know, NERC has been doing conservation environmental planning since the 1970s as well. So So we definitely have cut our teeth on that. What is of concern at the staff level is the definition of a greenway. As you can see, it's quite involved. I'm not going to read this all to you, but as you can imagine, a greenway encompasses many things. It's conservation, it's recreation, it can even be transportation based as well. They obviously help with the ecological conditions of our environment. They provide the public a way to escape and a way to recreate and a way just to basically enjoy the region in which they live. And putting the idea of greenways into two documents has confused the region for many years. People are like, why aren't the trails in the Greenways and Blueways plan? And why is it more conservation in the focus of the pedal and pedal plan and so on and so forth? So the idea was to finally bring that together into one cohesive document of the three major topics: conservation, recreation, and transportation. And this is a document that is unique in its focus in trying to bring these three elements together to make sense of them. And one of the major reasons we went ahead to accomplish this task is because we have had such a great amount of success and a background in both of these areas of conservation, non-motorized transportation. So these are our strengths at NERC, and they are our strengths because everyone in the public has been very helpful in moving these items along, and we believe we have found this point in our planning history where it was right to bring them together. So let's talk about how this works. It's expanding beyond the 2040 plan and those recommendations that are within that document, but we're hoping that the 2050 plan will absorb these recommendations. The chapters are divided by those three major areas. An overview provided, but not a detailed how-to. The pedal plans of both 05 and 2010, they got into the weeds about how to actually design particular things. There's lots of great things online. There's this thing called Google. Not sure if you heard about it. It's amazing. Type anything and you can find it. So lots of great resources there for that taking, and we just are able to bring it to people's attention, and then hopefully they can go into these other sites, take a deeper dive, and learn more on their own. We have a very strong data section part of the plan. Of course, no plan would be complete without goals, objective policies, and performance measures. As for the data itself, we had 2 public surveys. We launched these back in August of 2015. They were online at Intercepts. Intercepts are those surveys that are actually done in person on the trail. These surveys ended in 2015. We had 730 individual responses, and we had 190 of those were the intercepts, the personal contacts. Trail counts were conducted between May and October 2016. Forgot to update this slide. Our trail counts have now been updated to December of last year. So these are the trail counts. I'll get to that momentarily. Municipal surveys were issued in late 2015, and we were pleased to report that out of the 41 entities in Northwest Indiana, our 3-county region, 32 of them responded. That's a great turnout. And the final one, significant comments were obtained in the spring of 2017, and of course, because of these significant comments, the plan for the most part was brought back to the drawing board, and why we are now bringing it back to you this far down the line. Let's talk about the 3 chapters in a bit of detail. Let's talk about conservation first. Conservation is building on the green infrastructure vision that we have been working on for several years at NERC. We brought this forward in the 2040 plan, highlighted it, and kind of retooled it a bit in our update companion a couple of years ago, and of course it is the main focus of this chapter. Now, taking that conservation ethic and spreading it out throughout the region, we came up with these 9 corridors, what we're kind of calling conservation hotspots. As you can see, they're spread throughout the entire Northwest Indiana region, and they parallel, not exactly, but in theme, the corridors that we have established over the years for priority trails. There are 9 in all. Grand Calumet area of concern. This is up in the Whiting area, of course, the Indiana Dunes. The Moraine Forest, which actually runs here vertically, right through the region. That is Valparaiso Moraine. Hoosier Prairie, Oak Ridge Prairie in central Lake County. Hobart Marsh and Deep River on the east side of Lake County. Founders and Cedar Creek watersheds in central Lake County. Kingsbury and LaPorte, Kankakee Marsh on the southern end of our region. Of course, the Little Calumet River corridor, which offers quite a bit of opportunity all the way from the state line with Illinois all the way into Red Mill County Park in LaPorte. So wonderful opportunities that we're able to define here and hopefully bring about some interest in conservation and recreation development in those areas. This is a kind of a combined map that shows you all of the opportunities that we have in our region, green being areas of significant conservation focus. You also have the trails on here and the water trails. Of course, the blue lines being our riparian areas, and you can see how they all come together and blend and how opportunities can come about with this type of layering of our planning initiatives and how we hope that other communities, counties, and other entities will be inspired by such a combination of resources to move forward with progressive projects. So, there are several goals from the conservation chapter. Here's the first one about encouraging and promoting the preservation of natural or naturalized conservation corridors, protecting and linking our region's high-quality natural areas across the landscape. Now, you would only suppose that each of these do have several objectives to them. That's a lot more reading. I'm just going to stay with the top goals on this. The second goal from conservation, increase public access to natural ecological communities and conservation lands through the conservation corridors that I previously mentioned on that map. Our third goal, river and stream reaches within conservation focus areas, as well as regional riparian, local riparian, and priority blueways will have riparian conservation buffers. That's a long way of saying basically protecting our stream beds and making sure that development is sensitive of our waterways in this region. So those are our three major areas of conservation focus. Now let's get into recreation. Now, when we talk about recreation, in this plan, this is where we have put all the focus in on our regional trails. It must be emphasized that this is a plan of integration. We're not saying that trails are just recreation. Trails, of course, have a major transportation component, and we do try to emphasize that throughout the plan as well. But here's where we do present the major trails that are shown here, all the major corridors that have been named and have been worked on in our region for many years, projects that have been completed, much like the Erie-Lackawanna Trail, projects that have been underway for years, the C&O Greenway in Maridoe, and of course emerging priorities like the Dunes Kankakee Trail in central Porter County. We identify them, we talk about their location, and where they are today in regards to their development, miles remaining, and of course we have our visionary corridors on the bottom of this chart, the Marquette Greenway, which probably are familiar with by now, and the American Discovery Trail, that is the national hiking corridor that goes from Delaware to California and does make a pit stop in our region. And so these are high priority corridors for that reason, and of course bringing together a higher standard of scoring as well when we get into the funding component. Our priority trail corridor map, we have been working on this map for the last 15 years. It has guided all regional investment in Northwest Indiana. It has been quite the successful venture. All the routes that you see in blue are routes that are either completed or funded in our region. And of course, the darker colors mean a higher priority. You see the two high priorities right there. The northern end, the Marquette Greenway along Lake Michigan. And here's the American Discovery Trail coming in from Stark County, eventually going into Cook County as the American Discovery Trail route traverses through. Of course, if you're familiar with our process, many of you in this room are, when we do trail projects, we basically slap them up against this map, rank them accordingly, and then they are funded accordingly. And it's been a great process working with all of you stakeholders on making this happen. There's been a large amount of respect and also, in that sense, accommodation towards the map for our funding. And again, it's proven to be a success because of this cooperation among regional peers. Now, within this chapter as well, we talk about some best practices that you as a region can employ. We, of course, have a signage program or wayfinding guide in Northwest Indiana will, from this point forward, be implemented on all of our new regional trail projects. So we're looking to have that family of signage installed on both the Erie-Lackawanna and the Prairie du Chien Trail by year's end. Okay? And finally, people are going to know what city they're in, they're going to know what streets they're crossing, they're just going to know where they're at, period. I've always said our trails have an identity crisis, and this is going to go a long way to fixing that. On the bottom picture, this is the town of Maridoe. They took the time to take one of the tunnels on the Erie-Lackawanna Trail that is under Route 30, a tunnel that had been graffitied many times over, and they came in with a local artist and did this mural It was inspired by other public art that has been done throughout the country on our trails and in areas where places are isolated. This is an isolated segment. It's by an apartment complex. It gets tagged quite a bit, but ever since the mural was painted, there has been no graffiti. We have understood that people leave these alone. It's a matter of respect by the people who are graffiti artists in their own right, and they leave these alone. They would rather look at the blank canvases of wide concrete. So we hope to work with other entities where we have isolated segments of concrete along our trails where we can beautify them and keep them from being graffitied over and over again. Now, the recreation chapter takes a large point to bring out the amount of blueway creation in our region, or water trail creation in our region, especially since the passage of the 2007 plan. As I have explained many times over, in 2007, there had been no water trail planning in Northwest Indiana, zilch, and this was the first stab at it. Because of such, Northwest Indiana Paddling Association blossomed. It has over 500 members now, and they do many projects throughout the region. They hold events, they do stewardship, they do environmental training. They opened up many waterways for recreational enjoyment. It has been probably one of the best advocate-based success groups I have ever seen, and it's right here in our backyard. And this is just one of their events that they hold, of course, throughout the region. Blueways are great because they're already there. You just got to get to them. Where trails you have to build, blueways are already installed for you by Mother Nature. Now, of course, many of our blueways have problems with log jams and with other issues such as access. If you have a place to put your canoe in, you have to have a safe place to take your canoe out, so on and so forth. And many of these routes here, we have Lake Michigan, of course, and the Kankakee River. Those were low-hanging fruit that we're able to make, to bring about with new launches and new signage. Other areas include Deep River and the Little Calumet River, the east arm, and of course the west arm of the Little Calumet River as well. And so through NIPWA, we have been able to install many new launches, including ADA or wheelchair accessible launches for the disabled. We have Trail Creek, another water body that was opened up in the Michigan City vicinity, and they continue to work with communities and throughout our region. And I'll just let you know, wherever you live, if there is a waterway, most likely it is navigable, paddleable, and people can get down there and recreate. Even if it's only a mile or two in a canoe, means a lot for youngsters, and again, it's opening up a whole new world of nature and conservation for these individuals, even at any age for that matter. The recreation chapter is also replete with many graphs that talk about the findings from those surveys that were put out in 2015 online and that were done on the trail themselves. This is just 4 of several that are in the chapter. I'm not going to show you all of them, but we just talked about basic demographics. We talked about have you made different purchases on the trail itself, how far do you use the trail, walk, do you run, do you bike, purchases. So we're trying to get an idea of activity, economic preferences. So again, a holistic view of the impact that trails do have to a particular area. And we talked about trail counts. As I talked to you before, we do have trail counters in our region. They are little infrared boxes that we've installed discreetly throughout the area. Please note that these do not take your credit card information. They just simply care if you move. So with that said, they have to be installed so Bambi doesn't keep running in front of them and jacking up the numbers. But these are things that we're very careful about, and we have been able to identify several different areas within the region on our regional trail corridors. Primarily, we have done 6 trails in all, and these colors kind of show you how they break down. This is a recent graph, and as you can see here, just pointing one out, the trailhead where we have it in Highland on the Erie-Lackawanna Trail has 301 or 302 people per day as an average on the trail. So those are your averages, and of course those break out into the thousands throughout the region, and those are of course detailed to your heart's content within the plan. Now, as for those trail counters, okay, we installed 6 in the region, 6 on the Erie-Lackawanna, 12, there's 15 now, okay, 15 in the region. It keeps growing on me. 6 on the Erie Lackawanna, 2 on the Prairie du Chien, 2 on the Oak Savannah, 1 on the Pensy, and 1 on the Monon. And there's a couple of more on the Erie Lackawanna that brings the number up to 15. So trust me, it is 15 that we have in our region. And those are the boxes. It's locked up. We have had them out now for nearly 2 years. We've only had 1 vandalized, so we're doing quite well. We have a gentleman in our office. His name is Terrell Waddell. He does our traffic counts, but he also goes out and does our trail counts. He goes out to these boxes, collects the information, makes sure that somebody hasn't burrowed in there to ruin our counts. Just to let you know, we did have a reduction in counts one time from like this many to 0 because a bumblebee got stuck in the viewfinder and died right there. So these are things we have to continuously maintain and monitor. There was also one in Chesterton that had counts that were like 80 times what everything else. We don't even know what's going on. We still think it's possessed. We have to get an exorcism. I don't know what's going on. I still need to check that one out. So there's little bugs along the way that we're working on, but it's coming together quite well. The goals from this chapter include encouraging and promoting regional coordination and planning and trail development, promoting the benefits of trails, maintaining funding priorities to allow for the implementation of trails as our 3 major goals. Let me go back to that. The 3 major goals in our recreation chapter. Now, transportation, and that is not Photoshop. Transportation, when it comes to non-motorized transportation, there's one word that we emphasize throughout this entire chapter. The word is network. It's about building a network. Just like I-65 will not take you to your front door, trails are not going to be the only thing you need around this region to get around through bicycle or pedestrian, or in this case, if you're disabled, wheelchair, and if you are visually impaired and so forth. We need to build a network that accommodates all users of our transportation system, our non-motorized system, and we make sure that we emphasize what those network components are. So, of course, when you're getting into network, it comes down to planning, having a good plan up front, and the elements of a good network include bike routes, pedestrian routes, which people understand as sidewalks, intersections, of course, mid-block crossings, traffic calming, bicycle parking, wayfinding, as I talked about before, bicycle sharing, and universal design. Universal design meaning designs that accommodate all users of a particular area, no matter their age, their ability. And when I talk about as well with mid-block crossings, I think mid-block crossings are a low-hanging design element that I believe many communities can implement quite readily, especially if you have 3-lane cross-sections and you have large distances between intersections. Of course, the human being, they're not going to go farther than 150 feet on either side before they try to find a way across the street. So if you have these long distances between intersections, you're encouraging jaywalking just by human instinct. Hence the mid-block crossing, much like in this picture. So those are elements that need to be considered. Other network elements would include, of course, the maintenance of the system throughout the network. Maintenance is always one of those issues that seems to get overlooked when projects are completed. Hey, we got this beautiful trail. Okay, what are you going to do with it? Do you have anything regarding, snow removal, upkeep, weed and feed, and so forth? We want to make sure that's highlighted. Policy development. These policies include, of course, complete streets, making sure communities have a complete streets ordinance, safe routes to school policies and programs and events, walk and bike friendly designations. These are national designations. There is a very strong methodology and application process for both bike and friendly designation, and yet we still have no communities that have attained that in Northwest Indiana. Tyler. So I think Valparaiso is one of the closest communities, but Hammond's close to, many communities in this region could be close to a bike-friendly designation, and that's what I continue to push and encourage for our region. Development siting, we want to make sure that when you are developing, that it is bike and friendly in its land use configuration. School siting is a big deal. I'm seeing some schools within our region that are being developed way outside of where the residents live. That's obviously a disincentive for bike and walking to school by our youth. We want to make sure those are closer to residential areas, just in this example. Transit connections, making sure that our non-motorized network is seamlessly connected to our transit network. Of course, GPTC and other transit operators are in the room. Of course, GPTC buses in particular do have bike racks on them. That's just one element of how they can connect with the network. Bike to work options, trying to get employers to get more of their employees to think about this way of coming into work. Of course, If you can get in the development siting, making sure that employment centers are being located near places of residential areas. We talk about livable centers quite a bit with E-Man in our office. This is a perfect relationship. Regional oversight from NERC, making sure that we continue to get best practices out to you all and work with you on these in your particular areas. Transportation goals include encourage and promote regional coordination and planning and bike and ped network development. Improve connections between sub-regional and interstate networks and destinations. We're having a lot of success in this area working with Southwest Michigan, working with Northeast Illinois, and we continue to foster a strong relationship on those two fronts. Our third goal, encourage and increase bicycle and pedestrian access to and from all transit and multimodal facilities. Promote the benefits of bicycle and pedestrian networks, and of course, encourage why they are important for communities to think about holistically. Our fifth goal, to maintain a set of funding priorities to allow for the implementation of a regional non-motorized transportation network, and to reduce the ecological impacts of transportation networks through the promotion and development of green infrastructure. Should have said infrastructure, but the development of deployment of green infrastructure projects and policies in the region. We have an integration chapter, bringing it all together. People are like, oh great, you have these three areas, they seem kind of within their own silos. How do you bring them under one planning ethos? We try to emphasize this through a spectrum of uses between conservation, recreation, and transportation, and how they fall into that, how they all mix, and how they all work together and complement each other in the entire planning ethic. And we talked about the Greenways 8, or in this case, the return of the Greenways 8. There were 8 of these back in the 2007 Greenways and Blueways plan. We bring them back to the forefront. These 8 stakeholder groups pretty much encompass everybody in this room and pretty much everybody in this society, okay? And so it just plays to the fact that everybody has a role to play in all of these areas of conservation, of recreation, of transportation issues in Northwest Indiana. Now, taking that a step further, we get into implementation. And the implementation chapter is chart after chart after chart like this, okay? Taking the goal, then getting into the objective, and then slicing that objective down even thinner into policy and activity recommendations. We have sometimes 2, we sometimes have 4, and we sometimes even have more. But as you can see, what we do with each of these policy and activity recommendations, we spread it all the way through the 8 stakeholder groups. So if you're a particular developer, or you're a land trust, or whomever you may be on this spectrum of uses here, you can take a look down and find out exactly how you can be part of, okay, getting this plan off the ground and moving that particular objective forward. Where many other plans can be confusing, where you have just a gaggle of objectives and policies and you don't know where you fit into it, we try our best to make you, the public, figure that out as quickly as possible at your own level, okay? We also have several performance measures that we as NERC want to attain to, start measuring, and performance measures is a large component of our new federal transportation legislation and what we need to adhere to. And of course, it just also falls into the category of good planning. And as I said here before, we have these implementation charts. Here it is, color-coded based on the particular chapter focused where those goals started from. The next steps from today. Of course, we have the draft Greenways and Blueways 2020 out. The public comment period began on February 1st. It is due to finish on March 2nd. There are open houses. We are actually having one open house, and that will be on February 15th, Thursday, in this room here at NERC from 5 to 7 p.m. We have a review by the Ped Pedal and Paddle Committee and the Environmental Management Policy Committee at their March 1st meetings. And if everything goes well, and of course depending on the public comment, the recommendation to the TPC and Commission in March. So this body will be taking up the plan a month from now, again, based on public comments. We would like to see this expedited. We understand that when we had significant public comments, the last time we did this last year, we kind of sat on it in a way only because we had many other priorities that we were juggling. we are expediting this. If we have enough comments to delay it, it will hopefully only be delayed 1 month, and we will have this finalized in April before you all. And that's what I have for you this morning. If you hit the lights, please. Thank you. Bruce? Or thank you. And are there any questions at this time? You all here at Bedford? Yes, Margo.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Oh, you know, if you were an auction, you're broke. Tom.
You got 8 stakeholder groups. Where do you put public transit in that? Is it a stakeholder group, or do you put that as a broken up among local governments, or probably a resource?
It's federal, regional, state, and possibly local government, depending on where your source is of your funding. It is a governmental action for the most part. It's where we kind of deploy that particular stakeholder group. But that's how we work with the GPTC. They're a government entity, and that's how we have been working with them over the years and receiving federal funding. So quasi-public. So that's how we've been working on their organization for years with the bike racks, with placing bus shelters, making sure that people with disabilities can access them well enough, sidewalks. So they definitely play into it on that level.
It just seems to me that some of the decisions that get made, like where the Porter County Hospital is located, tend to be made without, or where the new hospital in Michigan City is located, they tend to get made without talking to public transportation. And you find out afterwards, oh, you don't service that area?
Makes it more expensive to actually bring that service because it's like extending new sewer lines to a greenfield.
And this is where we get into the hospitals. This is where we would kind of put them into the corporate property owners and how they would have to interact as well, dealing with transit issues. So that's something that I'll definitely take back to the matrix and make sure that there's a highlight on that end of it. So I appreciate that. Bill.
Just want to echo your comment on the blue waves on the county regulated drains, and there's some beautiful areas that, you know, are navigable, like Hart Ditch there in Munster. I've gone down with the kayak before. It's really nice. Access is an issue.
Yes.
But anyway, anything we can do from the county regulated drain survey, I want to support that. And I guess a comment or a question, what the 8094, the picture on 8094 with the bike, was that Photoshop?
No.
Yeah, it was all shut down.
A fellow bike advocate rolled his vehicle on the Borman during the 2008 floods.
Oh,
yeah. That is probably the only time you're ever going to see that happen. It was a magical time for bicyclists. We should have probably filmed a zombie movie while we were up there. Had so many opportunities. But thank you, Surveyor, for that, because you're right. And Cedar Creek and Lowell is also another perfect way, but you're right. They're deeply incised. You got to get down there. You got to make sure people are safely able to access it. Those are the challenges.
It will.
Any other questions?
I have questions about Salt Creek.
Yeah.
See Salt Creek, has there been any more recent information on the development of that?
Yeah, Salt Creek has been frustrating. They had it all cleared out, then the 2008 floods came, and it all got re-logged up. And there was a significant investment to get it cleared out, and I don't know where the energy is to kind of get back at it. But it's still on the planning. There's still a major opportunity there, especially in the Portage area, Imagination Glen. And right behind us here at the Ameriplex, it's a beautiful stretch of a waterway, and of course in the Valparaiso. So this is where NIPWA would come in. There are specific recommendations in the recreation chapter on each of these blueways. And so if I had it in front of me, I could tell you. But I would encourage you to go online and please take a look at that.
I just wanted to
By the way. But I don't know offhand, and there's no NIPWA person in the room here.
Yeah, that's understood.
Yeah.
I just wanted to bring it to the attention.
No, I appreciate it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Anybody else? If there are no other questions, again, I encourage you to please go on our website, NERC-C.org. We have this located under the transportation section, under greenways and blueways, and then if you go to that link, you'll find the plan itself in its entirety. from start to finish. And again, our public comment period closes on March 2nd. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Marlowe. Well done. I'd like to welcome Joyce Newland. Thank you for showing up. And those others who came in after the introductions, thank you for being here. Next on the agenda is implementation planning. Kathy Luther. Kathy, would you like to bring us up to date on the VW settlement and BFRAC Riverdale also?
Yeah, so I just wanted to give people a really brief update. I know we've talked in this venue and also with the commission. The VW settlement actions, which are going to provide opportunities for funding for diesel engine replacements or repowers in a variety of settings. That process is moving forward. It's being managed by the Indiana Department of Environmental Management, Office of Air Quality, Sean Seals, who many of you may have worked with in the past during funding for Diesel Emission Reduction Act and other projects. So we had, they had a public meeting here last Tuesday to give a presentation about where they're at. There's a statewide advisory committee that will ultimately be making decisions, but for everyone to be aware that they do have a framework of how they will operate that funding out for public comments. The comment period ends on March 30th. They are actively looking for comments of what types of projects we should prioritize, how they might score projects. I think this is really important because the state has been pretty clear this is a statewide funding source. You know, if we feel we have compelling arguments as to why more funding should be allocated to Northwest Indiana, say questionable attainment status, that item we disagree with EPA on, or environmental justice issues or transit issues. Those are all issues that it would be really beneficial to supply comments directly to IDEM on that, which you can find that information, I should have put the website on their website, and we've been sending it out, and I'll make sure it goes out again to this group. I will ask them to do so. Also, kind of a side note, but not really. So, as you know, part of our CMAQ public education program funds South Shore Clean Cities to run green fleets. Many of you are already part of the Green Fleet program, where they will help you evaluate your fleets for energy and emission reductions. For a limited time only, if a community is not a green fleet and would like to sign up for a green fleet to get free technical assistance, you can get a free seat at the South Shore Clean Cities luncheon next week. Any questions about the VW settlement? No. Then I just wanted to let people know as well, kind of at the intersection of the Blue Wave Plan and our watershed planning efforts in the Environmental Department, we have secured funding to sponsor a feasibility study for the Deep River Dam, which is in Lake Station and is half owned by Gary Public School Corporation and half owned by a absentee landowner, former mobile home park. Anyway, the dam is unsafe, so we have a contractor that is doing a feasibility study that we had a public meeting at Lake Station about that 2 weeks ago, and had a lot of public interest in that. So I just wanted to make people aware that's another project that NERC is engaged in implementing the 2040 plan.
Any questions? Okay. Thank you very much, Kathy. There's no report for programming. Topical committee reports. Environmental Management Policy Committee. Sorry about that.
Honestly, yes, thank you. We had a great presentation from the Field Museum. They've been working for a number of years on scaling down global climate predictions for our region. And they've just partnered with Save the Dunes to do
a study of adaptation for the Dukes National Lakeshore and management. And there was a really great presentation, a lot of information about pretty well-established predictions and forecasted changes in precipitation, longer growing season, etc. Subsequent to that, actually, on Friday, NERC applied to the Federal Highway Director for a pilot. They have opportunity for pilot projects to evaluate vulnerability of transportation infrastructure. So we did turn that application in, and we'll see what happens.
Any questions? Moving right along. And again, we get to see our star of our show. Here's Mr. Parloga.
Okay. The Penn Pedal and Paddle Committee met February 1st, and you just saw what we did. So, went over the greenways and blueways, and our next meeting is March 1st. That will include a presentation by NICD on the Bikes on Trains and how their 2017 program worked, ridership and all. So there'll be an opportunity to ask questions there. And if everything goes well enough, we will also have the review and recommendation of the Greenways and Blueways plan. And that'll be on March 1st, right here. We might even start moving the time. It's 1:30 now. We're not going to move it this meeting, but it might get moved to 11 a.m. following EMPC, so people don't have to sit around and wait for 3 hours between meetings. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Transit operators?
Great. The Transit Operators Roundtable will be meeting today, immediately after this meeting in the Dune Room. And we will be continuing our conversation of the project selection process for rates and port.
Okay, thank you. That means carry your conversations outside. Hey, ma'am?
Land Use Committee, good morning, everybody. The Land Use Committee met last month, January 17, and we had 3 features presentation. The main one was the first bus rapid transit by GBTC on Broadway corridor. That was a very interesting presentation. We also had a presentation about the Regional Food System Council by Gabrielle. And I think you're going to announce also about the...
Yes.
Okay. And the third presentation was about we are updating our land use data using GIS. We used intensive data when we did the 2040 plan. However, we are getting ready for the 2050 plan. And we had all the data based, was polygon based. Now we are transferring all the land use data to be parcel based. We're getting all the parcel data and trying to update our GIS and some missing data also. We got it from the aerial photos and we added to our original data. Also, the parcel data has all the land use, however, it's missing all the transportation data. So we don't have the transportation, which is a major thing. We want it as polygons. We have all the data as line only, even though the width of the road sometimes is between 40 to 60 feet wide, and that's missing when we do the calculations of the land use. So that's what we try to have an intern now, working with that. We try to add all of these transportation polygons to our GIS data. So that's what we are working on. We are also meeting the third Wednesday in March. Any questions? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Moving right along, break today. Not today? Okay. Strike that from the record. Surface Transportation Committee.
The Surface Transportation Committee met last Tuesday, February 6th. We met at 1:30 in the afternoon because of time conflicts with this scheduling in these rooms. But we talked about the bridge conditions in Northwest Indiana. I gave a presentation because that's one of the performance measures that Federal Highway and Federal Transit are Federal Highway is rolling out related to our bridge conditions. So we looked at the condition of bridges in our region, and we found that they performed slightly more poorly and slightly less goodly than the bridges across the state. And so the committee was interested in presenting those findings when we coordinate with INDOT as part of our target setting with bridges. We also gave an update about the safety performance measures that we adopted. We adopted INDOT's performance measures last month, but it's going to have to be a formal amendment into our plan, so that will go in March, hopefully, after our comment period is open. I also talked about the household travel survey effort that we're performing with CMAP in conjunction with our neighbors, Terry Dixon's here, the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning. That effort is ongoing, but NERC has just signed on with the contract with that effort, so we'll be surveying about 2,000 households in our region to see where the members of their households travel on a daily basis. Will help us with our data collection efforts. We also gave an update on the congestion and reliability project that NERC is launching in conjunction with Valparaiso University. So this is to study our travel time, reliability, and congestion. Again, it's one of the areas of performance measures that are rolling out later this year. So we'll have a better idea of what our travel times and reliability are. I gave an update on the air quality post-processor that INDOT has a contract with that'll help us with our travel demand model more directly be able to model air quality impacts in the future. So that'll help us speed up that process so that we can demonstrate air quality conformity. Our next meeting will be on April 3rd at 9 a.m. Any questions?
Okay, thank you very much. Reports from our planning partners. Joyce Schumann. Are you doing it jointly or Susan Weber?
Sure. We shared with NERC staff and INDOT just late last week, actually Friday, the final draft of the certification report. The review took place last summer, and it's been a long time in compiling and writing the report, but staff has had the opportunity to review it. We're going to be meeting with staff even later today, so we're not going to be reporting out on that today.
Okay, emerging trends presentation. Oh, sorry, Christian. Do you have
something to say?
No,
Please do.
that's fine. You said it all. That's all.
Okay.
Nothing.
Okay. Regional planning agencies.
CMAP.
That's me. We are just going through all the processes and steps. We're going to be releasing onto 2050 at a launch event in October of this year. So we're doing papers, we're doing public outreach as far as that's concerned. So we're going through the same processes, I think, just a step earlier than you guys. So that's all.
Any questions? Okay, moving right along. We have someone else looks like a familiar face.
Hello again.
Mr. Carlo.
Our emerging trends video is in the city of Hobart. Thank Lori Cagle of Clean Cities for submitting this to me. I encourage any community that's doing projects to enhance their community, to highlight their best practices in their community, just show off. We don't care. Bring them to my attention and bring them to our attention at the staff level. We'd love to highlight them and show what we're doing here. Hobart is very proud of their eco-friendly environment and policies, and they made a video for it. So if you could hit the lights again, please. Thank you so much, Harrison. And I hope it's sufficiently loud.
This is Hobart, Indiana, the friendly city, where memories are made in a clean, healthy environment, where natural resources are cherished landmarks, where leaders understand that if it's good for the environment, it's good for Hobart. The city is transitioning into an eco-friendly city, and those who live, work, and play here are enjoying the city's green efforts in large and small ways. Hobart's Green Renaissance began in 2014 with the addition of the city's first compressed natural gas-powered garbage truck. The purchase was funded in part by grants acquired in partnership with South Shore Clean Cities and the Northwestern Indiana Regional Planning Commission's Green Fleet program. City officials vowed then and there to make Hobart a trendsetter in regional green efforts, and they're living up to the challenge. Hobart recently purchased an all-electric Nissan Leaf for use by the city's special events director. Due to a group purchasing program in partnership with South Shore Clean Cities, NIPSCO and Nissan, the city just paid half the sticker price for the vehicle. An electric vehicle charging station was installed at City Hall in 2016 through NIPSCO's e-Charge program. The station attracts electric vehicle owners to the city's thriving downtown district, providing support to the small local businesses. The station provides complimentary charging through 2018. Hobartsville taxpayer recycling facility accepts unwanted paint, keeping the paint and paint cans out of the landfills. The paint collected is blended and recycled into high-quality product and sold for a minimal fee to residents of Lake and Porter counties. The recycled paint is free to government agencies. Leaders understand the important role of education as the friendly city becomes the eco-friendly city. Working with the school city of Hobart and the Lake County Solid Waste Management District, the city's recycling rate increased by 51% when students were challenged to design logos for the city's garbage and recycling trucks, a prototype of a recycling mascot, and a recycling-themed t-shirt. More than 4,000 students packed the Brickyard Football Stadium for a rally to celebrate their successful efforts. The city practices greenscaping, landscaping with native plants that are both aesthetically pleasing and help filter and reduce stormwater runoff. Hobart's green efforts are doing more than saving the planet. They're saving taxpayers' dollars and creating a more efficient government. What started in 2014 with one alternative fuel garbage truck has blossomed into Hobart's working cleaner, smarter, and harder for the taxpayers. And this is only the beginning. Hobart is in the process of constructing its own compressed natural gas station at the city's new Public Works garage. The project, funded in part through a federal grant in partnership with South Shore Clean Cities, will make fueling the city's growing compressed natural gas fleet easier and more efficient. The city's compressed natural gas fleet is expected to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by as much as 95%. Hobart is embracing green projects right here in Northwest Indiana, proving that an eco-friendly city does not have to be a large urban setting. Hobart is still the friendly city its residents, businesses, employees, and visitors know and love. With these green programs, Hobart, the friendly city, is truly becoming Hobart, the eco-friendly city.
All right, are we inspired? Can you hit the lights, please? Lots going on there, and obviously, kudos to Mayor Stenekor and the people of Hobart and his staff who are not here today. I can't brag on in person. With that said, Lori, there's a lot going on there from South Shore Clean Cities. Do you want to take a moment to highlight any of the people in the room?
Sure. The video actually was created in the fall, and that CNG station is now up and running, as is a new public works garage, both of which were funded in part through NERC programs and NERC CMAQ funds. And this public works garage is specially designed now to be able to handle maintenance on these CNG vehicles, which has to be done in a slightly different way. If there were to be a leak, for example, it will automatically detect it and shut things down. There's special lighting. We had a huge celebration, over 100 people there last month. Kathy was there, I know. It was fabulous. So there's a lot going on, and this is the kind of thing that we can help communities do through partnership with the DOE program, with NERC, and with South Shore Clean Cities. A great opportunity to learn more, as Kathy was pitching. Our annual meeting and award ceremony is a week from today at the Blue Chip. If you're a part of a community that is not a Green Fleet member, contact our offices, let us know. You can have one free ticket. We have more than 300 people there, more than 40 exhibits, which includes about a dozen vehicles. So you can actually hear from others you don't have to hear our sales pitch, right? You can hear from other communities. The award winners there are going to be those who have achieved the greatest gasoline gallon equivalent reductions based on their annual surveys that are sent to us. We wanted you to hear from them this year. You can hear it from us all you want. You can hear it from the manufacturers. You can hear it from the car dealers. You can hear it from everybody else. We want you to hear from them how membership has helped them not only reduce emissions but also save money. So please come, SouthShoreCleanCities.org. You can learn a lot more about what you can do just like Homer does. I appreciate it, Rich. Thank you.
Of course, and again, everything's in play when it comes to progressive municipal planning initiatives and policies. Please bring them to our attention. We love showing off what's right in this region.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mitch. Good Lord. Trevor,
Good morning, everyone. Just to give a little background, so in NERC's 2040 plan, they called for creating a robust regional and local food system that connects with transportation, land use or growth, the environment, environmental justice, and economic development. So sort of that needle that threads everything together. And so NERC then convened a variety of stakeholders to form the Northwest Indiana Food Council that has been around for about 2 years. And the mission is to sort of oversee and improve all aspects of the food system. And so I do want to bring to your attention, there's an upcoming event. It's called the Food Expo and Discussions, and I have the poster here just to visually see it. And this is going to take place on February 23rd, next week, which is Friday. All-day event. This is the second annual one. Last year we had over 200 people attend, and this is a great opportunity to just make those connections, bring these issues to the forefront, discuss them, find solutions, bring everyone together from a variety of stakeholders to talk about these things. So this year's theme is food justice and food access, and we have a great number of panelists that are going to speak about all parts of food access, urban farming, urban ag, grants and funding, alternative resources. There's just a slew of speakers. So I encourage everyone to attend. We're also going to have a collaborative visioning event that is going to help with the 2050 plan and looking at food deserts and how our transportation systems can help improve those areas. So I encourage everyone to attend. You can visit the NWIFoodCouncil.org for more information and where to register, and you can just come and see me afterwards as well. Thank you.
okay, thank you. All right. And Mr. Bartolomeo once again.
Okay, under staff announcements, you also see this ADA 101 for outdoor recreation and parks. I'm proud to announce that we are working with local advocate Julie Alvarado and her organization called Causes for Change and the National Park Service on this all-day seminar on March 20th in this room. I think it's going to be a free registration once we get it out. We're just asking that you BYOL, bring your own lunch, and we will have options for Jimmy John's or whatever you prefer eating. But that will be March 20th. I do not have any information at this time regarding registration, but I hope this week we'll be able to get that out to all of you. And it is a focus on trying to bring in ADA compliance in the areas of our outdoor recreation and park facilities and adaptability policies. As I talked about in my presentation before about universal design, these are policies, projects, and programs that are continuously emerging, and we want to make sure we stay on top of it and again present best practices to you. And I'm very proud of working with Suli and her advocates during this seminar. So more information to come.
The chairman's here.
Apologize.
I explained earlier that you were tied up with 4 county commissioners. But the next meeting events, I'll go ahead and do that. Okay. NERC's executive board will meet this Thursday, February 15th, 9 a.m. Right here. And the emergency office will be closed February 19th in observance of President's Day. The Transportation Resource and Oversight Committee for Lake and Porter counties will meet February 27th in the Dune Room. Environmental Management Policy Committee will meet on Thursday, March 1st. Pedal and Paddle will meet at 1:30. Is that correct?
Still one.
Okay. And the next Technical Planning Committee meeting will be held Tuesday, March 13th at 9 a.m. right here. And now,
all I'm happy to add, I talked to our new chairman, Jeff Hansen. He's in Washington right now. He's on his way back. On Thursday, he's realigning some of the committees and also making the appointments of membership to the committees, chairman and vice chairman. So stay tuned. Thursday, we should know a lot more and see where we're going with this. We may eliminate a committee or two, or not eliminate, but merge some of the committees as well. So just be informed that this is all coming up. Changes. Good.
well, welcome, and
Thank you.
are there any other comments or questions before we adjourn? Would you like to do this, sir?
We're adjourned. Thank you.
Okay.